And welcome back. It is time for another episode of Blitz Boys here on the Jackwagon Sports Network. We have a lot to talk about. It was a wild week 2 in college football. We're going to break it all down. Also, get you ready for week 3 of college football. There's a lot to talk about before we even get to the games that were played. One of the things that we're going to talk about, and we updated you or brought this news to you on Saturday when Out of the Tunnel. Washington State and Oregon State filed a restraining order against the Pac-12, the 10 teams leaving, and the commissioner, uh, because they want to have a meeting this Wednesday to kind of decide what the future of the conference is going to be. What are we going to do moving forward, and kind of handle the business for this season as well. Oregon State and Washington State said, no, like, if you 10 are leaving, you leave, and we will handle this. So they filed the restraining order on Monday. It got approved. So there won't be any meeting right now. It's a huge win for those two schools. As of right now, they're just kind of processing what their next steps are going to be. Nothing has been announced, but that news has come out, which is huge for them. Your thoughts on that, Slade?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge news. I hope that it ends in favor of Oregon State and Washington. I think that I mean it's ridiculous to think that either of those schools were going to just go along with what the rest of the schools that are abandoning the Pac-12 wanted, which,
Right.
like you already explained, is just to basically sell off the farm and hope to just scrounge as much money as they can up before they go to the next conference. One thing I did want to say is I think that it sucks that something so monumental like this has happened. And for the news and stuff that I follow, it seems like it's been overshadowed for the most part by Mel Tucker.
Yeah. No, we're gonna talk about Mel here in a second, but yeah, that is sad. And I mean, shout out to Washington State as well.
Mhm.
They go out and they beat a ranked Wisconsin team at home. Huge win for them. I watched a little bit of that game. It was on the same time as the Oregon game. Um, and they interviewed the Washington State athletic director, and he kind of talked to him about the whole process. Again, even as an Oregon fan, I'm still rooting for Washington State and Oregon State to find good homes and be taken care of going forward because they're very deserving programs. I can't say this enough. They deserve a lot more respect than they are getting from anybody, and this was a huge step for them. Again, it looks like the desired plan for them moving forward from here is if they can continue to control the Pac-12 rights and all this other stuff. Their main goal is they want to control the voting rights that the
Mhm.
Pac-12 gets right now, because it's labeled as a Power Five conference that comes with special privileges and voting powers within the NCAA. They want to preserve that. They want to hopefully merge with the Mountain West. Rebuild that conference, kind of rebrand it as well, but keep that Power Five status, keep that voting status moving forward. So, if they can do that, that'll be huge for them. Definitely something we will keep you updated on and keep our eye on. But just wanted to update you that since we first brought it to you on Saturday. Speaking of things that came out on Saturday, this came out Saturday night. Slade had just alluded to it. Mel Tucker finds himself in a little bit of trouble. Currently, right now, he is suspended without pay. There's no timeline on how long the suspension is. It's an indefinite suspension right now. 9 times out of 10, when you get an indefinite suspension, it leads to you being fired. So what happens is, and this is still accusations, they have a lot of evidence for it, but until it's fully proven, um, Mel Tucker brought in a woman by the name of Brenda Tracy. Brenda Tracy is a sexual assault survivor, and she came in. She spoke to Michigan State, shared her story, um, and was kind of like a beacon of positivity for the team that Mel Tucker really, you know, enjoyed bringing in and speaking to the team, kind of motivating them and opening their eyes to what is possible and what not to do. Essentially, is kind of the thought behind doing speeches like this. Then it appears. So the allegations were brought last January, and I'll get into the full timeline here. At some point last year, though, Mel Tucker began calling her, um, sexually harassing her over the phone, even though she said multiple times she didn't want it. Um, did prolific acts over the phone, talking to her the whole time. And so she alerted Michigan State's Title IX department and a couple like sub departments in there, brought that to their attention. From what I've gathered so far, what happened from there is they launched an investigation. They didn't do anything to him at the time. They didn't suspend him while the investigation was going on or anything like that. They allowed him to go out, still recruit, all this other stuff. Um, Brenda Tracy wanted this kept private. She didn't want her name out there. She just wanted the problem taken care of. It was supposed to be kept under wraps, and apparently the the school board was, doing their investigation, came to a decision. The president had to let the board of trustees know basically what was going on, and hey, this is what we're going to do going forward. Again, thought at that point it would still be kept private. It appears one of the trustees then leaked that information that was supposed to be kept private, and that's how this whole story has broken. So it's not clear exactly what was going to happen to Mel Tucker before that. Was it going to be a slap on the wrist? Um, that is, that still remains to be seen what's going to happen here. I don't think he's ever going to coach again. And he was married. The fact that he did this to a sexual assault survivor is there's not enough words to describe how scummy it is. But I just want to get your thoughts on the whole situation. And
Yes, I mean, it's crazy to be. The school was paying her to come in and do these speeches, these talks, these things to educate people. Like you had said, she was a survivor. She was sexually assaulted by a Division I football athlete.
mhm,
So she's coming in as a survivor, telling them that like these are all the things that you guys think are normal and funny and okay, and it's not okay. It's going to end up with you getting in trouble. It's going to cause problems for you, and all of the negative things that it's causing for the person that they're doing this to. Um, the fact that the school and Mel Tucker are bringing her in for expertise in this situation and to guide these players, and then doing the exact opposite himself of what she is doing. I just have to imagine that he was not involved in any of these speeches. um, and I mean, the other thing that I feel bad for her, but also I don't know how she thought that this was going to go about. And it's shitty in her situation, but I don't think there was any situation where this doesn't become public.
yeah,
I understand that she wanted it to be private. She's going to get a shit ton more money in the lawsuit for that being the one thing that she was asking for, and that this to be private, and them leaking this themselves and making this a huge thing. But they're not going to fire, in my opinion, the most overpaid uh, coach in college football right now, and it just gets swept under the rug that, oh no, it just wasn't working out. Like, and
I
even
don't
with
think.
even they would have had to suspend him, make him sit out some games, do without pay. I mean, I don't think there's any situation that, with the way things are now, you've got Urban Meyer, you had
Mhm.
Joe Paterno. I mean, these things cannot get swept under the rug for the university, or you're looking at 10 years with it affecting the entire university. I mean, not
Right.
just the football team. And so I just think it's crazy that anyone in the situation thought that this was going to amount to a behind closed doors settlement type deal.
And I think from her standpoint, it's less that she didn't think the entire situation would be kept under wraps, especially if he does get fired for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more so she just wanted her name kept out of it. Like she wanted it to be like an anonymous reporting almost, and like, hey, Mel Tucker was fired for sexual harassment, and then here's some details, but we're not going to release the person's name. And then once the report was given to this trustee, the trustee's like, okay, Mel Tucker sexually assaulted this woman, her name over the phone. I think that's more so like, and in her situation, I would be upset at that too. Um, but I mean,
Supposedly, Mel has also come out and said that he has proof that for lack of better words, the phone sex and whatever else that was going on, he claims was consensual and that he has proof of that. I don't know how. I mean, I'm sure that that's the first thing that his lawyer and everyone is trying to push out there, to try and save face for him. But I don't know how true that is. But I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Like you had said, I honestly don't think that there's any chance he continues coaching, even if it comes out that it was consensual. I think that it's just too much of an eyesore for the school. And it's an easy way for the school to get rid of the negative debt that they were going to have to pay him over the next however many years. I mean, they still owed him $80 million or something like that. So,
Yeah. Uh, yeah. So I mean, they would absolutely love to get out of this
mhm,
contract because I mean, it hasn't worked out since he got it.
no,
Um,
and it's not going
but
to with the reconstruction of the Pac-12 teams coming over. Like,
yeah. But I mean, if you look at this from the Michigan State standpoint, they were working very hard to change their image because, they had the whole Larry Nassar situation in the USA Gymnastics, and now this just kind of feels like another step back. They have an interim president right now who's trying to handle all this, and she's, God bless her. Like she's like, this is not what I signed up for. I get this is my role, but like, why do I have to be the one to deal with this? So not a situation I envy Michigan State being in at all.
no.
Again, they're trying to prepare their image. They're trying to, progress themselves going forward. They had a shooting last winter. Actually, I think it was in the winter, but I think it was 2023 winter, but I can't remember the exact date. Either way, um, the Michigan State has a tough road uphill, and this is just kind of another thing that just got stacked on top of it. I think regardless of if it comes out to be true or not, Michigan State just wants this to be done. I think they want to fire Mel Tucker regardless. Now they need to have just cause. I mean, if he has enough proof to be like, listen, this I did not do it, and so on and so forth. Um, they can't fire him then because then he can sue, or if they fire him, they still have to pay him his money.
Hmm.
Um, but I think Michigan State would really like to just get this over with, do it the right way, but put Mel Tucker behind them, move on, and then continue to try and rebuild from there.
One thing I did want to bring up, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but uh, so Penn State went through their Sandusky problem, and it ended up where the school owed upwards of like $60 million in payments to the survivors and the people that
Mhm.
were affected by all that. Larry Nasser and Michigan State, I think it was like $600 million because it was over 100 people that were affected by this.
Right.
And then they have the money to pay Mel Tucker 80 or $100 million, whatever. I think it was 80 million guaranteed, 100 if it fulfilled the contract or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, what kind of funding is going on at Michigan State that I mean, there's $700 million that's being allotted to two specific things that I mean, the $600 million they don't get to choose that. Obviously, that is
Yeah.
something that is awarded to the survivors. That's a guaranteed thing. But I don't understand where all this money is coming from there when their athletics, aside from men's basketball, sucks.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at just at the football standpoint of it, um, I mean, the $600 million, I believe. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I wouldn't know. I don't think that would have to be a lump sum. I think that could be a payment over time.
Right? They just
But like,
raise tuition. Yeah.
right. But I mean, Mel Tucker's contract is $95 million over what, 10 years. So
Mm-hmm.
got to think that again. That gets divided over 10. The football team alone brings in enough money from the Big Ten TV contracts and all that stuff. So a lot of Mel Tucker's contract and that payment stuff comes from that money. Um, and that's how they're able to upgrade all these facilities and stuff like that. And that's where a lot of that chunk of change is going to come out of.
That makes more
Um,
sense.
yeah. But enough dwelling on the crappy stuff. Let's look at week 2. There was a lot of great games. Again, I think people were excited for this week. There was a couple more marquee matchups. We're gonna talk about week 3 here in a minute. Slade, what was your favorite game from the weekend?
Um, so my favorite game, I I kind of had two. One because I was at the Penn State game, but the other one I'm going to go with Ole Miss Tulane just because I thought that it was going to kind of be a really great game. I know that Ole Miss kind of pulled away, uh, but I just still think that that was the best game in my opinion. Without going with the Texas Alabama game.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. It was a great game, regardless between those two teams. I just wish that Michael Pratt would have been healthy and could have played in that
Mm-hmm.
game. I think that would have made that game, that much better. I think Tulane wins that game. I mean, they really
Probably.
controlled Ole Miss for 2.5, almost 3 full quarters, and then Ole Miss kind of pulled away there at the end. I think with Michael Pratt, I think that's a shootout back and forth all day. So that's the one thing that kind of sucked about that matchup. But the fact that Ole Miss or excuse me, Tulane was still able to hang with Ole Miss on that level and play, up to Ole Miss's capabilities was amazing to see. They're going to be all but eliminated from playoff contention and all that stuff. But I agree with you. I think that was one of the best games. And then we had Oregon and Texas Tech, who tried to put me into a freaking coma. But let's go ahead and look at the 12 games that we covered on Saturday morning. Um, First one up we have here is Notre Dame at NC State. I was kind of disappointed I didn't get to go to this game at first, and then there was an hour, like over 2 hours actually, I think,
Yeah.
weather delay because of lightning. And I was like, yeah, you know what, it's not that bad. Um, come out of the weather delay. Notre Dame could not get the ball moving. They have 3 points. I think they had like 50 total yards through a quarter and a half. They come out of the weather delay and they just run it. That first play was a 75-yard touchdown. um, so Notre Dame got their offense going. NC State hung around until like middle of the fourth quarter before Notre Dame got a couple big stops and then kind of put the punctuation on this game. I know you were at the Delaware Penn State game, but I don't know if you got saw any highlights. Any thoughts from this game?
Yeah, no, I did not see any highlights from this game. Obviously, the score makes it seem as if Notre Dame blew this game out of the water, but like you had explained, I mean, this was a lot closer than that. And Notre Dame definitely got tested there in the first quarter and a half ish, first 20 minutes of the game. So I'm interested to see how I, I'm I'm really anxious to see how they stack up against Ohio State here eventually, because
Mm,
I thought that the way Ohio State was playing the last couple of weeks, Notre Dame was playing phenomenal. I'm like, oh wow, Notre Dame might win this by I don't know 10 points, and now I'm like, oh okay, maybe it might be a lot closer than 10 points. I don't know, it's really making me wonder.
yeah, I mean, the thing I think that is kind of on Ohio State side when you look at Notre Dame playing so far is yes, Notre Dame just beat what I would call a pretty good NC State team. I don't think NC
Mm,
State's on the level of what Ohio State is.
no.
But if you look at Notre Dame the first 2 weeks before this, it was what appears to be a pretty bad Navy team, and they played an FCS school. Ohio State played a conference opponent in Indiana in week one. Um, and then an FCS school this week. Again, they did struggle early in that game, but then they got their offense rolling and they looked much better as the game went on. I still think Notre Dame and Ohio State is going to be a ridiculously good game next week. That's going to be a ton of fun to watch. I just because of who Notre Dame played, I don't want to sit here and say Notre Dame should be favored by 10 points or anything like that.
Right, right, right.
Um, because I Ohio State's going to come out and make it a dogfight no matter what the spread is. So
Correct.
it's going to be a fun game next week. Next game we thought this could be a little bit closer. Kansas State struggled with they struggled with Tulane last year. It was an American team, but a Group of Five school. They played Troy, the defending Sun Belt champion. They mopped the floor with them. It wasn't close at all at any point. Kansas State wins that game 42-13. Not much to say other than that. The next game we're going to look at was Purdue going to Virginia Tech. We said there was a weather delay in the Notre Dame NC State game. This game kicked off at noon. I think they played maybe the first quarter. I don't, not even the full first quarter. Um, and then it finally restarted when the 7 o'clock games were kicking off. There was that long of a weather delay. So I mean, I feel bad for both of these teams that they had to sit through all that. It ended up being a fantastic game, 7 point game here. I was able to check in on it every once in a while. It did suck. It got taken off in national TV. Um, the videos though coming out of the Virginia Tech fans basically in muddy fields just playing in the downpouring rain was fun to watch. But great game there. Started as a day game, ended up becoming a night game. Night game at Lane Stadium is always a ton of fun.
Quick question:
Yeah.
as a coach, what what do you think you do for 6 hours?
I don't, so my senior year, no, junior year, we played at Susquehanna.
Mhm.
Um, and we got there, and like literally as the bus pulls in, it's downpouring and there's lightning, and so they're like, okay, 30-minute delay, and so we get dressed and everything, and we're sitting there. It looked like it was gonna start clearing up, and then out of nowhere, it just starts again, and I was like, we're going home, like we're gonna go home. We're just gonna come back tomorrow and play the game tomorrow. And they're sitting there like, no, we're still gonna play tonight. I was like, all right. I think we sat in a locker room for like 2 hours, and like we hadn't done anything yet though. Like we haven't even warmed up. But at that point, like there's no food for us to eat. Like we're starving, and it's like, all right, like this is getting ridiculous. I remember sitting. I'm pretty sure we were in the girls' locker room, and girls' locker like it didn't smell bad, but it had like a weird smell to it. And I'm sure girls would say the same thing about a guy's locker room, but
Mhm.
it just had like kind of like a weird smell to it. And you're sitting there, and you're just like, this is annoying. And then I remember we went out, we finally played the game, and then out of nowhere, like a huge fog bank came through, and I was like, "This is weird." Um, so I mean, I sat there for 2 hours, and it was I couldn't stand it. I couldn't imagine doing 6 hours. I mean, I guess so. I know in the Notre Dame NC State game when they had the delay, Notre Dame ran out of food. They just went up and they bought like a ton of hot dogs and
The
hamburgers and
concession
brats.
stand.
Yeah, and so I mean, I would assume Purdue probably did the same thing.
Yeah.
I would honestly wouldn't be surprised with how long that delay was if they got something catered in.
Yeah, but I mean,
Look,
at what point do you go for a second meal?
yeah,
You already ate
uh,
breakfast before the game. Now you ate lunch, right? I mean, maybe 45 minutes into the intermission. And
yeah,
then you get like 5 hours more in, and you're like, maybe we should order dinner, guys.
and I mean the hard thing too is as an athlete, like you get yourself amped up for this game,
Hmm.
and it's one thing to have a weather delay. I feel like it's easy to come back from like I would say anything less than 2 hours. It's easy to pick yourself back up and like, all right. But sitting there for 5 6 hours, it's
A
like,
lot
all
of
right,
energy.
like damn, what am I gonna do now? Now you gotta re-energize your whole system. Um, I wouldn't if it's 6 hours. I don't know what kind of facilities Purdue was given. I don't know if they just stayed in the stadium. But if I was in that situation, there'd be a lot of film. It's like,
Yeah.
"Hey,
Yeah, I
listen,
guess so.
we had the opportunity," and especially by that point, you would have, "Hey, here's what's happened so far in this game. Here's what we can." It's almost like a halftime
Hmm.
times 5. You get to sit there, work on your adjustments a little bit more, but and God bless those kids. God bless the fans that
Hmm.
especially, Purdue parents and fans or whatever that travel to that game. They're like, we gotta stick this out. So I mean, God bless them. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do 6 hours. I think after like 2 hours, I would have been like, all right, I'm going home. I'm gonna go somewhere else. Um, Next game we're gonna look at is Nebraska at Colorado. This game could have been so much more.
Hmm.
I know you didn't get to watch much of it because you were at the Penn State game during it. Jeff Sims, I have 2 years of eligibility left in college football. I wholeheartedly believe I could show up to Nebraska today, try out for quarterback, and I could start over Jeff Sims. Like you have to be so inept to not be able to do simple handoffs. And he can't catch the snap. I mean, his interceptions that he's thrown. We talked about this on Saturday before the game, and I said, Nebraska can absolutely hang around in this game. They have the defense to do it, but it's going to come down to what Jeff Sims can do. His throws are absolutely horrible. Nebraska's defense held Colorado. I
Very
think it
good.
was. I want to say it was 0-0 at the end of the first quarter. If not, it was 3-0 at the end of the first quarter. Nebraska's defense weathered the storm, but when you have to go through long, grueling drives like Colorado was putting them through, especially with the speed Colorado had. They could stretch out Nebraska. They were getting some decent yardage, and then Nebraska would get backed up, but then they would make a big stop. And when you go through long drives like that on defense, your offense goes out and they either fumble in the first play or it's a 3 and out, and you got to go right back out there. There's only so many times you can do that before you get tired, and you know Colorado doesn't have depth, and that's what our concern is with them going forward. But they don't need depth if they can just send Travis Hunter on a go route, and he's going to get covered the first 6 times. But once that cornerback is tired of covering him and not getting a break on the sideline, sooner or later, it's going to break free some plays, and that's eventually what happened. Nebraska or Colorado was able to just pull away. Um, Nebraska needs to figure something out at quarterback. Like there's no other way around it. That I Matt Rule really wanted Jeff Sims. He went after him in the transfer portal. He
Hmm.
tabbed him. That was his guy. He wasn't good at Georgia Tech. Like he showed nothing at Georgia Tech. There was no promise, and I don't know if it was just believing that he was in such a terrible situation down there, and we know Georgia Tech wasn't really any good. But
They're thinking, okay, this is him around 2-star athletes. Let's see him around 4 and 5-star athletes.
right, um, I mean, I'm really curious to see where Nebraska, not even just this season, but looking at the off season, I don't think they have like a big name quarterback recruit yet. I mean, they need to do something in the transfer portal this winter regardless. They need to get a new quarterback in there. Um, but yeah, that Nebraska's defense could easily be one of the best in the country. And the fact that Jeff Sims is going out there and playing like an absolute dumbass, it I was kind of cheering for Nebraska because my father-in-law is he's a Nebraska alum and a fan. I don't know how Nebraska fans watch football anymore. Like watching them play the last few seasons, I could not turn on the TV to watch. I'm a Bears fan. I can't watch the Bears anymore on TV because I just want to shove my face through a cinder block wall. And I don't know how Nebraska fans do this year in and year out. Um, but we'll have to wait and see, about what happens in the
So,
future.
question that I had for you. So I had kind of seen two sides of the story here. Supposedly, there was a big deal about how Sanders QB and
Yeah.
his dad both had said that like this is personal. Like there was maybe some words said before the game or during the week leading up to it. And when they had asked Matt Rule about that, he had made the comment that before every game they pray that both teams come out unscathed. You know, it doesn't matter who you believe in. Everybody prays if you're into religion, you know. And so and then he had also said that both teams were told to exit the field right away, that there was not going to be a coach handshake. And he said that he didn't care if he, got mobbed by a bunch of fans, that he was shaking the hand. It's part of respect, blah, blah, blah. It just kind of seemed like there was two sides of the story. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on that, or if it was like two separate things happening and they were kind of grouping them together. Or if this is just, I mean, Colorado is bringing in so much money just off of the wow factor, making sure that they're in the headlines nonstop. I mean, I think they said that so far in single game tickets, they've sold $500,000 just since the start of the season. So, just what was your thoughts on the controversy there between where it's going back and forth?
So I know before the game they were talking about how it's personal. And that came from, I guess, in the offseason, Matt Rule had made some comments. I don't remember exactly what the comments were. Um, I don't think they were super. Obviously, they weren't racist or anything.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to that, but um, kind of put down Coach Prime, and from there, obviously, his son is going to take that very personally.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the it's personal comments were coming from.
Okay.
As far as saying the prayer and coaches handshakes and all that stuff. I as a coach, I obviously would want to go shake the other coach's hands. I also understand that Nebraska or Colorado fans just absolutely stormed the field
Mm-hmm.
before. I don't know if they got a chance to or not. Um, but
They did shake hands, but it
oh,
was
did
like
they?
kind of in the end zone as they had security kind of help him find Coach Prime. But I it seemed as if Matt Rule was told that there wasn't going to be a middle of the field meeting, that they were just going to try and get the athletes and the coaches off the field as soon as possible just for their safety. And Matt Rule had gone against that, but I don't think it was really relayed over to Colorado because they basically like beelined trying to chase Coach Prime down as he's like running from the one side towards the end zone so he could do his quick interview and then head in.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is a rivalry. I think should be brought back full time. I think Nebraska should go back to the Big 12. I think they're really struggling recruiting in the Big 10, trying to draw kids there over head to head against Ohio State, Michigan, schools like that. And now you're going to bring in Oregon, USC, so on and so forth into the mix. Nebraska was so good at football when they were tied to the Big 12. They could tap into Texas recruiting pipeline and all that other stuff. Whereas now they've kind of lost that connection a little bit. Um, and I've said this before. Nebraska would be so much better served in the Big 12, and I think they need to go back to it. Um, but I mean, if they did that, this rivalry would be back full time, and I think
Mm-hmm.
college football needs this. Uh, People kept talking about how this was a rivalry game on Saturday and all this other. It didn't have the feel anymore because they haven't played in so long. They don't play every year, and so much change has gone on at both schools because they've Nebraska's and Colorado. Before Coach Prime got to Colorado, don't forget they sucked. Like I think they
One and
had like
11.
three winning seasons in the past like 15 years. Maybe not quite that long, but um, they've been terrible. And Nebraska has definitely had its rough stretches. They've had God knows how many coaches since Tom Osborne left. Um, and so just the identity of these schools has changed so much. It didn't feel like a rivalry game anymore. And that's what sucks about conference realignment and also is, we are losing so many of these rivalries. But this is one that should still be around because both schools should have never left the Big 12. As soon as Colorado left, I think they made one conference championship game, and I think they played USC, and USC mopped the floor with them. I think Nebraska's made two. I know they definitely made one, but I believe they may have made two Big Ten championship games. They didn't win either of them. And they've continually and steadily declined. So these are two. Colorado's desperate. I shouldn't say desperate to get back to the Big 12 just because they're so far things are going pretty well this season. I think things are going to explode for them once they get there because one, the competition, but two, again, it opens better recruiting pipelines, I think, for Colorado over what they get in the Pac-12 right now. And that's what Nebraska is missing right now. And they're not going to have to, if they did that, again, you're recruiting head to head with Colorado. And again, there are good Big 12 schools, but not to the caliber of recruiting that Michigan, Ohio State, and schools like Penn State are.
Mhm.
And I think those are Nebraska's biggest problem. Colorado kind of got fixed by having Coach Prime. He can, attract any kid to come there because they want to go play for a coach like that. Um, Moving on, though, I think we spent enough time on that game. Let's look at Texas A&M and Miami. Texas A&M should have won this game. They
Mhm.
definitely had the team to do it. Um, and then Miami gets a big kick return, and it sparks them ahead. They get a huge push. Um, I just want to go on the record and say I said repeatedly, I'm not buying the Texas A&M hype. I'm not going to believe it. I did have them pick to beat Miami just because I didn't think Miami was any good either. Um, but I was right. Texas A&M still sucks. Jimbo Fisher still sucks. Um, but your thoughts on this game, Slade?
Yeah, I was very surprised. Honestly, I agree with you that Texas A&M doesn't seem like they're going to be able to pull it together. I mean, Jimbo Fisher came there. They've had a top three recruiting class how many years now, and it's just they're playing with all those that number one recruiting class players now, and it's just crazy to see that they're unable to get the job done. I mean, they should have easily beaten Miami with how Miami has started the season off so far, and at least by I don't know 10, 14 points. But it just seems like somehow they have a way, like you had said, momentum. As soon as the other team gets any sort of momentum, they're just done,
Yeah,
and it's just crazy to see.
yeah, absolutely. Uh, I still don't have much hype behind Miami. I mean, this is a huge win for them, um, but I don't believe in Mario Cristobal's system just because I've seen it for so many years at Oregon. Um, I think he'll get more and more decent recruits in there. I think Miami will become like a B tier ACC team, but I don't ever see them getting to a national championship caliber just because of what their head coach is and what I had to experience for how many years at Oregon. But um, next game we got is Iowa at Iowa State, the Cyhawk Trophy. So much BS happened in this game. Iowa again fails to get to 25 points in a game. They're falling behind their 25 points per game average. There's no way, and I said this in our TikTok when I made the quick hits after the 3-3 games were over. There's no way Brian Ferentz or Matt Campbell are rehired next year unless a miracle happens.
Hmm.
Even if Brian Ferentz somehow got to his 25 points per game quota, I would not want him back. He is so many elite offensive weapons on his side right now, and he can't put up 20 more than 20 points against what I think is a terrible Iowa State team. Um, I think Matt Campbell deserves to be fired because in his post game press conference, rather than being, like, hey, we lost and we need to put more effort in, common cliches. This man gets up on the podium and goes, this is, we haven't won this game since I've been here, but this is the best we looked in this game. You look like shit. How is this the best that you looked? And oh my, like watching his press conference, this is Matt Campbell and Mel Tucker. Justin Wilcox was another coach. Tom Allen as well. Four coaches right there who had amazing COVID years, and they looked so good in 2020. Um, and since then, Justin Wilcox is the only one that's somewhat turned it around this season. He's 1-1, but he looked good against an SEC team. Um, Matt Campbell, Mel Tucker drama aside, his coaching, he has not looked good the last 2 years. Um, you look at Tom Allen, ever since they didn't even make it to the Big Ten championship that year in 2020. He went 6-2, I believe. I don't think they've won more than 3 games in the last 2 years combined. Maybe it was four. Regardless, so many people put stock into what happened in the COVID year, forgetting how much BS was going on, how many players were sitting out, and all this other stuff. Oregon won a Pac-12 championship, and I think they won 3 games before that, 4 games maybe. It's just the amount of hype that went into these coaches in that season just didn't make any sense to me. It's frustrating to watch, but um, yeah, like I said, I think those two guys are definitely getting fired.
One thing I wanted to add to this is we cannot judge Iowa or Iowa State on this game strictly because this was for sure a setup thing that the the betting agencies and everything were looking to see how many bets were placed in the state on what things, and this was definitely a sting operation. I mean, you've got Iowa who needs to score 25 points a game to keep a coach, can't do it. I mean, they've got multiple. I mean, they're gonna have to put up 60 against Northwestern and just to like have a chance. I mean, they still have to play Michigan State. They still have to play Nebraska, who has a really good defense. They still have to play Penn State. I mean, it's going to be very hard if they're not going out against these teams that they could realistically. I don't understand it. I do not understand it at all. But I do think it's ridiculous, like you had said, that they can't get to the 25-point quota against what seems like a lackluster Iowa State.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Iowa's next 3 weeks, so they play Western Michigan this week, and then they have
Which I
Penn
would like to
State.
say, the
Go
fact
ahead.
that they have not scored 25 points and the spread is 28.5 against Western Michigan is ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the out of the tunnel rundown, but my cash out pick is
Yeah,
Western Michigan
yeah,
plus 28.5.
yeah.
Um,
I liked it.
but yeah, then they travel to Penn State for the whiteout game. I
Hmm.
mean, no disrespect to Iowa, and again, they have a very serviceable team. I don't see any way that they stay within 20 points in that game just because their
I don't.
offense can't score.
I don't think that. I think maybe two teams have scored 20 points in a whiteout game against Penn State in the last 10 games. I mean, it's always like 19-16 or 21-19. Like it's
Yeah,
always right at the 20-point mark. I don't know. And this is always Michigan or Ohio State. This isn't Iowa.
yeah, and I mean, and I want to go back to this game real quick. I get that this is a hard fought rivalry. This is two teams that do have pretty good defenses, and I get that it's difficult to score in these games, and it's I understand it's a rivalry game, and that takes precedent above all else. You can't tell me these two coaches, especially the offensive coaches, who see the same damn thing every year, can't figure out something else to do to try and move the ball. Watching these two teams play each other is like bashing your head into a cinder block wall. I said this earlier. It, I don't want to watch this football game anymore. Like I've watched this the last
Mhm.
how many years, and every year it's the same damn thing, and it's always a stupid turnover that cost the team. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. Iowa State's winning. They have the game won. They just need to field the punt cleanly, and their gunner literally just tackles the returner in like mid fair catch, and then they fumble the ball and they lose the game. Um, this game is just always filled with stupid stuff, and their offense is
I
always
One thing I wanted to add also is that if I'm Iowa and there is this point thing that they're trying to get to and everything, if you have not scored 10 points by I don't know, 5 minutes into the second quarter, you need to be going to that last page in the playbook, like the plays you would run if you were down 20 points. I
Mhm.
don't know what needs to happen here, but I mean, they're playing the same Iowa offense that they've been playing, and like you said, their defense is going to keep them in games, but they need to do something different. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. The next 6 games we looked at, one of them turned out to be a lot better than we expected. we talked about this Saturday morning. I said point blank, App State doesn't have the same team they have last year. UNC looked so good in week one. There's no way App State keeps this close. It went to double overtime. Of course it did. Game of the year candidate already. This is our game. Like we give out our awards every week. This was the game of the week. Your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great game. I did not think that they would be able to kind of even get close to replicating that wow factor from last year, and they definitely did a great job in this game. It was great to watch both sides of the ball.
Absolutely. Um, Going from this game, I have a lot of concerns about UNC now
Mm.
because one, how bad does that make South Carolina look? And I think this should be treated like a rivalry game. I think these two teams should play every year. I know North Carolina's excited because they don't have to play App State anymore. I think they need to continue this game every year. Um, but I am definitely concerned about UNC's continuity going forward and how well they can look from week to week. They have a very tough Minnesota team this week coming to town. That's not going to be an easy game for them. So UNC, who I think got a lot of praise coming out of week one because expectations were here and they played here. Well, now once you do that, expectations were up here. Maybe this team can compete for the ACC, especially with how bad Clemson looked in week one. And now you go out there again. I'm not trying to disrespect App State. App State is a very good football team. I think they just propelled themselves into the conversation, especially with how Troy played as Sun Belt favorites now. Um, and so but if I'm UNC looking at this, it's okay. Are we really this good? Can we compete with Clemson, Florida State, schools like that? Um, so plenty of questions still surround that UNC football team. Um, I forgot to replace the Kansas State logo with the Texas Tech logo.
Mm.
Oregon beat Texas Tech 38-30. I'll talk about this game because I swear I couldn't feel my heart for about 45 minutes after the game. Um, I knew I hate Oregon Twitter because I'm deeply involved in it because obviously I follow a bunch of Oregon pages. The amount of shit you were talking before the game, I knew instantly. I was like, this game is not going to go well, just from the amount of trash they're talking. One guy tweeted, um, I'll find the tweet here and I'll come back to it, but uh, I knew instantly, and again, I said before the season, Texas Tech was my pick to win the Big 12. The way they played Saturday, they still are. I understand Texas looks good. I'm not trying to talk trash on them, but I think Texas Tech is a very good team. Coach McGuire is a very good coach, but let me find. So here's a tweet. I'm unclear as to why so many Oregon Duck fans are nervous about this Tech game today. Texas Tech is a good team, but unless Oregon turns the ball over a lot, they won't lose. And I was like, "I'm sorry, have you never watched an Oregon football game before?" Because I've watched this team since seventh grade. I've been a diehard Ducks fan since seventh grade, and I was like, "Yeah, I have watched this team play before, go up against teams that they should blow out by 60, and then it goes to double overtime." I think of Stanford 2 years ago. Stanford, I think, won two games. One of those games was Oregon because of bullshit calls. Um, I just knew from that moment on this was going to be a tight game. Oregon didn't play bad either. Bo Nix, I don't think we had any turnovers outside
Well,
of failed fourth down conversions.
one
Um,
thing I did want to mention quick,
mhm.
uh, 38 to 30, 20 of those points scored in the fourth quarter for Oregon.
Yeah,
The fact that this game is 8-point spread and Texas Tech's quarterback threw 3 interceptions is just pitiful to me. I mean, it really makes me think that I mean, obviously at the beginning of the season, I was just trying to pick someone else than the favorites, but it really makes me think that Oregon State has a chance at beating
oh,
Oregon in the
no,
regular season
no,
and
they one
long
hundred
term
percent do. Yeah,
because it really scared me that I mean they got 3 turnovers and it didn't really amount to them being able to capitalize all 3 times.
yeah, no, I 100% agree with you.
It seems like their offense runs on sparks. I mean, they score 15 in the first quarter, then only 3 points in the second quarter, then zero in the third quarter, and then they followed up a 20-point spark to end the game.
And what I'll chalk that up to, and I'm not pushing the panic button yet. I mean, they obviously
And
don't have
one of
it,
those touchdowns, that last touchdown, sorry, was with 35 seconds left.
and it was a pick six. It wasn't even the
Yeah,
offense. Which also, and I get in that moment you're just excited and you see green grass in front of you. I'm just gonna run it in. I just wish the dude wouldn't went down because then I
yeah.
still had I thought it was over, and then I'm like, shit, there's 35 seconds left, and then Texas Tech starts moving the ball. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And then they get in the Hail
Well,
Mary range.
for
Still,
everyone that had Oregon at -6.5,
oh,
they loved that he picked
super
off and
exciting.
ran into the
Yeah,
end
and I
zone.
get that.
For us that doubled that and got a little eager and put it at 13.5, we were not happy.
Yeah. um, yeah, I just wish it would have went down, would have saved me like a couple extra
For sure.
heartbeats there. Regardless, but going back to Oregon's offense, you could tell the offense coordinator is still trying to find his groove,
Mhm.
find his identity. I mean, obviously he looked so good against Portland State, and so the whole offense did. Um, but here it's okay. Like what's working in dealing with the ebbs and flows of the game. I think we'll be fine going forward. I mean, it doesn't help that we have difficult tests coming up.
Mhm.
Colorado at home. It's the Pac-12. There's no easy weeks. I'm not going to treat it like it is, but I think with more experience, and I think at the end of the day as well, Bo Nix wasn't going to let that team lose. I mean, a lot of people were frustrated with his play. I thought he played fine. Um, we ran the same run play, I think like 30 times throughout the game. It was little just Bo Nix caught it and just pitched it straight out to the running back, kind of like a buck sweep. And it worked for the most part. But at some point, when you line up in a third and fourth and one situation, and they know what's coming, and that's sure enough. By the end of the game, they had figured that out and they were stuffing it. Um, so he needs more time, and I know he's an experienced coach. He came over, I believe, UTSA. I want to say he is where he came from last year. Um, but I'm not pushing the panic button yet. I don't want to freak out. Hopefully, Hawaii presents a little bit of a challenge where we have to go through kind of those same situations and work through it. Um, but again, it could have gone so much worse, and
Mhm.
especially there in the third quarter when Texas Tech really turned the tide on us, and it looked like they were going to start pulling away with that game. I got concerned, and Oregon hunkered down, and they got their offense going, and they put the points on the board and they win the game. So I'll take it. Next game we had was SMU at Oklahoma. It says 28-11, but I promise you it was a lot closer than that. It was
Mhm.
14-11 in the middle of the third quarter. Oklahoma got a
Yep.
big touchdown, and then they attacked another one late. I said SMU was going to keep this game close. They did. They kept it closer than I thought they would, and not just
Mhm.
the fact that it was 20-11. The fact that they held Oklahoma to 28 points, coming off a week where they scored 73. Um, I mean, SMU's defense is legit. I think they are contending to win the American. My two favorite teams in the American right now, I would put Tulane and SMU. I think they both look really, really good, especially the teams they played this week. Um, your thoughts on these two?
Yeah, so I just, you look at the stats and it's like, dang, Oklahoma QB 19 to 27 for 180 yards and 4 touchdowns. The running back 21 carries for 120 yards. The receiver 7 receptions for 80 yards and a touchdown. It's like, oh wow, the other team stats are like half that for all their stuff. This shouldn't be close at all. And then you're like, oh wow, it was a defensive game for sure. Both defenses definitely came to play, it seems, and it kind of worried me a little bit for my pick in thinking that the winner of Oklahoma Texas is like a sure thing to be in the Big 12 championship. I just think that it's not what I expected for sure.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I'm still excited to see that Texas Oklahoma
Mm-hmm.
game in a few weeks. I think the winner of that game essentially locks themselves into the Big 12 title game. Um, I mean, obviously, we just said this about the Pac-12. I don't think there's any easy roads in the Big 12 as well. Um, I, I I know this is a changed Texas team, and supposedly a changed Oklahoma team, but these teams both find dumb ways to lose to teams they shouldn't, or they're going to play. I think they both play Texas Tech this year, um, and they play. I both play Kansas State. Kansas State's a team that can trip them both up. I could honestly see like Oklahoma going out and losing to like an Iowa State one week or something like that. Um, that just seems to kind of be, we used to call it Clemsoning, going out and losing. I could see one of the teams pulling that. Um, Speaking of Texas and Alabama, Slade, I'll let you talk all about this one.
I mean, I slept through the entire game, but I woke up, was very happy. Steve Sarkisian became the first coach under Nick Saban to then coach a team to a win, a double-digit win at Alabama's field. He was the first coach to hand Nick Saban a loss at home and double-digit after being a assistant coach underneath him. I think that Quinn played a near perfect game in my opinion, and I think that it really makes you wonder what would have gone down last year had he been able to be healthy. You know, even more now. We had talked about it before the
Right.
game, obviously, but I mean, it both teams were very close, and then all of a sudden, bang, a 35-yard touchdown, passing touchdown.
Mhm.
It was crazy to see. I thought it was awesome to see. I think it was Pat McAfee, uh, Eli Manning, and someone else that were on the sidelines when when Alabama threw their like 40-yard through the air passing touchdown, and it was towards the end of the game there, and it was just crazy to see all the different camera angles, all the buzz that was going on there. It was really great to see. I mean, I didn't get to see the game itself, but I got to see a lot of the replays and the videos and stuff, and I just thought that it was a great environment. It seemed like it was nothing but respect between the two coaches afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I was flipping back and forth between this and the Oregon game, and what I'll say concerns me about Texas the most coming out of this game is through I would say almost the entire 3rd quarter, their play calling really concerned me.
Mm-hmm.
They went forward on a 4th and 1, they ran a really dumb play, and luckily, like, the ball fumbled, the running back picked it up and ran for the first down. Um, just really questionable play calling. Quinn absolutely had flashes of showing that, if Texas can be undefeated, he can be in the Heisman conversation. I think that's what's gonna take this year, just with the way Caleb Williams is playing. He's putting up video game numbers every week, and he
Did
looks
you see
ridiculous on film. What's that?
the last quarterback to beat Nick Saban at home was Joe Burrow, who went on to win the Heisman
Oh,
Trophy. And so, it's funny that you mentioned that.
yeah. Um, but, he definitely still has room to grow, and I mean, that's every quarterback. Uh, Alabama threw all they could at him, and he weathered the storm. He came through in the 4th quarter with a lot of big plays, and they put the game away. Um, Looking at Alabama, I think a lot of people are pushing the panic button, saying the dynasty's over. I'm not gonna go that far. I'm not saying the dynasty is over. They absolutely have their problems, and I think the biggest thing that hurts Alabama is when they became so good and they started this long run of dominance is the transfer portal wasn't really a thing. And people are saying Nick Saban needs to tap into the transfer portal more. I don't think he can. Because what he does is he recruits the hell out of these 4 and 5 star recruits. He brings in the top recruiting classes every year. And what used to happen is he would have 2 deep 5 star recruits. And then they couldn't transfer, they would sit there, they would develop, but they would just be stacked throughout the whole roster. They'd put out their second team when they're up 50 to nothing, and they put up another 50 because they're so good. Whereas now, he still brings in those kids, but they sit there for the year and they're like, "Well, I don't have to sit on the bench here. I can go play somewhere else." And that's
Mhm.
what's kind of leveled the playing field across college football. Um, but again, I'm not gonna sit here and say the dynasty's over or anything like that. I think that absolutely they have problems, and I think the biggest one is, and we're gonna talk about this on Saturday, their offensive coordinator's a moron. I don't know why they thought hiring Tommy Rees from Notre Dame was a good idea, and, a lot of people are pointing the finger at Jalen Milroe saying he's not good. He got recruited to play football at Alabama. He's fine, and I get he's not, not a Heisman candidate contender or anything like that, but who are you gonna put in? Are you gonna put Tyler Buckner in? The guy that lost to Marshall for Notre Dame last year? Like,
He doesn't want to play supposedly. He's
I
supposedly
I
there
wouldn't want him to play.
to to be a developmental player to help out with the team and everything. I don't understand it. That's what I've seen in multiple reports that when he had lost the position that there was no ill will, that he's ready to stay, like he's ready to root the team on and help out. I also think that, like you had said, before he was able to have 2 deep 5-star recruits. I mean, he's having the problem that it used to be. You come to Alabama, it doesn't matter where you are in the depth chart. You're going to see playing time. You're going to win a national championship if you play for 3. If you come and are on the team for 3 years, you're going to win at least one national championship. Then all of a sudden, Clemson won one year. Clemson starts pulling some of those South recruits out. Now Georgia's pulling South recruits out. So and then Texas A&M one year took basically everyone in the pool everyone in the pool of 5-star guys. So
Yeah.
it's like or
Well,
Texas A&M. I
and
don't know if I said Texas. Sorry. But I mean I agree with you in that it's much harder to recruit people to your school now when, like you'd said, you don't have to wait a year. You don't have to waste a year.
yeah, I think, and I think Georgia is, and honestly, I mean, they haven't looked great this year. Maybe it's affecting them this year, but what Georgia pulls in, and I think they're going through the same thing right now. They're pulling in ridiculous 5-star recruits, but so many of them are transferring out after 1 year because they just want to go, give me my national championship ring, and then hey, I'm going to go play somewhere else. Maybe I can win one there, but I like guarantee me one now. I'm going to go win one for Georgia. I don't care if I'm the third string. I'm just going to
Mhm.
go play, sit on the bench, whatever, get my ring, and then I'm out. And I think that's causing a lot of depth issues for Georgia. Um, you know, no disrespect to Carson Beck, but they don't have a stellar quarterback right now. I think that's a huge problem. But I mean, we'll have to wait and see with Georgia because I mean, at least they're still number one. They're still winning their games. They have their first kind of test this week with South Carolina, but we'll wait and see. But I am not jumping on that train that dynasty is over at Alabama. I'm not going to say that
I
until
mean,
next.
they were winning the game with 15 minutes left. That's
Yeah,
that's what people are. I mean, Texas threw two amazing passes there in the fourth quarter to score 14 points. I mean, they scored 20 in the fourth quarter, and I mean, it's Alabama was winning the game
yeah.
16-13.
Until Alabama starts losing 3 or 4 games a year, they're still especially with the 12-team format coming out, there's absolutely still a threat to win national
And
titles.
and last year, the whole everyone was like, "Oh, we need to pull the plug on say it's time. The dynasty's over." And then people are like, "Oh, he lost 3 games by a combined 4 points."
Yeah.
So like
There's
it
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you look at his 2 losses last year, one was to, Tennessee in a huge in a back and forth shootout,
mm,
last second field goal, and then they lose on a 2-point conversion in overtime to LSU. Um, so yeah, I think a lot of people are overreacting. Is Alabama to the level that they were before? No, because, again, I think
mhm.
the transfer portals that they're not going out there and blowing everybody out 60 to nothing. Wide receivers are not there having rock, paper, scissors on who's gonna run the go route and get the touchdown ball. Um, but yeah, the dynasty's not dead. I won't say that until, like I said, Saban's losing 4 games a
He
year
is
or he just
going
straight
to
up retires.
run the new playoff format.
Yeah,
They're
I'm
gonna
100.
coast. They're gonna coast as like the second or third SEC team into the playoffs, and then
Mhm.
they're gonna run through it.
Yep. Next game, we brought this up earlier. Washington State beats Wisconsin at home. I knew I should have picked this as my upset alert. Wisconsin came in as I think it was 6-point favorites.
Mhm.
Washington State obviously upset them on the road last year. Now they get them at home. Wisconsin, you can tell, is still kind of trying to work through ushering in this whole new identity, this whole new team with a new head coach. The biggest and most surprising thing to me coming out of this game was Wisconsin was held under 100 rushing yards. I can't remember the last time I heard that statistic. Uh, that's just an unheard of number. Washington State, I think, is putting themselves into conversation of not just I wouldn't quite yet say Pac-12, contender, but they can absolutely spoil a lot of seasons this year. They're going to play Utah. That's gonna be a Friday night game. We talked about this when we did our Pac-12 preview. Friday night Pac-12 games always end up doing weird shit. And so God only knows what's gonna happen in that game. I think that's in 2 weeks. We're
Mhm.
gonna have to wait and see. And last but not least, we've alluded to this game a few times now. Ole Miss beats Tulane on the road 37-20. Um, Great game, back and forth. Again, I just wish Michael Pratt would have been able to play in this game for Tulane. I think, 1, this game's a little it says 37-20. It looks like it wasn't that close. Tulane was going for it on every fourth down there at the end, trying to close the gap. Just ran out of steam against a surprisingly, I shouldn't say surprisingly, but a competent Ole Miss team that played a full 4 quarters of football, which is something I feel like we don't always see out of them. And so here we are. Ole Miss gets a huge road win. Let's go ahead and look at our updated pick standings. I, I was 11-11 coming into this week, and here I am sitting at 20-15. So I'll take it. I'm 5 games back at Nick. Forget back at you. You had a pretty good week. As I think you had the best week out of all of us. Yeah, you went 9-3. Nick and I both went 8-4. So great week of picks.
Back
Got
to the
that early.
depressing times.
Yeah, got that early season
Seriously.
rush shaken off. Here we go. Cash outstandings. You had a rough week. You
All
went
I gotta say is, if anyone is betting on the stuff that I'm putting out here, I apologize.
yeah, Nick is having a really good year so far. He's sitting
And he's
at
not even betting
6-1.
it. It's pissing
Yeah.
me off.
You gotta start putting your money on his bets, and then maybe
No,
they'll
because
start
then it'll
losing.
lose. I did that
Yeah,
last year. I think he started out hot last season, and the first week I betted it lost.
yeah. And I'm sitting there at 4-3. I'm taking that 1-1 every week. I'll gladly take that.
Hmm.
Um, Make sure you guys check us out Saturday morning, and we will go over all this for week 3 and get you guys ready for that. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Let's go ahead and get you ready for week 3 as we're talking about it. There's 4 games we're gonna look at happening on Thursday and Friday. Uh, I think it's a pretty good slate. Other people were talking before. This is a quiet week. I think there's a lot of great matchups. Throughout the entire week. We're going to talk about these 4 on Saturday. I think we have 14 different games we're going to be picking from. I think it's a loaded slate, but I mean, I know you guys don't get the hype around the group of 5 games.
George likes Division II football.
I do. All football's good football. But the
Right.
first game we're going to look at is Navy at Memphis. This will be the Thursday game on ESPN, 7:30 kicking off. Nick is going to go with Memphis at home. Slade, who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I'm going with Memphis as well. I haven't seen really anything out of Navy, and so I think that it's basically Memphis's game to lose. I mean, you either go out there and score 0 points, or you put up 20 and get the win.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to take Memphis in this. Memphis needs to prove that they are trying to compete in the American this year. I think they're an afterthought in a lot of people's minds. I think they want to go out there and prove it wrong. Navy, again, like you said, they did not look good against Notre Dame. They looked okay this past week in their first game since that Notre Dame game. But if Memphis wants to prove that they're ready to compete in the American, they need to have a big first game, and that's going to come against Navy. So I'm going to take Memphis at home. Next game is a rivalry game being renewed. We have Virginia going to Maryland. This will be Friday night at 7 p.m. Fun fact: I actually went to this game in 2013. I think it's the last time they played this. Um, but it was so we Friday night 7 p.m. on FS1. Nick is going to go with Maryland at home. Slade, who do you got in this?
Yeah, I went with Maryland as well. I think at the beginning of the season we kind of talked about it, and them being kind of that middle tier team that could kind of challenge some of the upper echelon teams in the Big Ten. So I think that they're able to get this win.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with Maryland. I will say they played Charlotte this past week. Charlotte was hanging with them. I think they were actually leading, for a decent amount of the first half. And I was like, damn, maybe Maryland isn't really that good. Second half came around and they kind of flicked that switch. They pulled away from Charlotte. They looked much better. So I mean, I think this is another tune-up game. I, that's a little disrespectful. But Virginia did look very, very good against James Madison this past week. I think that was an emotional performance, though. I think they're going to go on the road. Tagovailoa is just going to open up the offense, and I think Maryland's going to pull away.
How did Virginia end that game again?
They
Dang. So
not
it
well.
got delayed, and they were up.
Yeah,
I think big, like score. I think it was like 7 or 10 points that they were up, and then James Madison somehow stormed back to win by one.
I got I got the notes here. What were they up? 35-24 with 9 minutes left.
Sorry,
Virginia
11,
was
11, 11 points. Yeah,
Yeah, with 9 minutes left. So
yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm going to take Maryland in this one. Next game we got is Army traveling to UTSA. This will be Friday night as well, 7 o'clock on ESPN. Nick is going to go with UTSA. Who do you got in this one, Slade?
Yeah, I'm not trying to kind of stick the path with this. I'm gonna go opposite. I'm just gonna go with Army. I think that they're going to be able to kind of get things moving this week and kind of surprise UTSA, in my opinion.
I'm going to go with UTSA, and I'm honestly a little undecided on this, but just because of what Army does with the ball. They like to run the clock out, especially with these new clock rules. And UTSA has not looked good on offense. There was a lot of expectations around them. Frank Harris was coming back at quarterback. They did lose their offensive coordinator. I didn't think it was going to affect them this much, but it clearly has. They lost a very close game against Houston, and then they struggled this past week as well, but they're able to pull out the win. Um, but I think the longer the season goes on, Frank Harris is going to get that offense rolling and clicking. So I'm going to take UTSA at home against Army. The fourth and final game we're going to look at is Utah State traveling to Air Force. Both service academies are playing this week on Friday. All three service academies are
Mhm.
playing Thursday and Friday. So this will be Friday night, 8 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. Nick is going to go with Air Force at home. Slade, who do you got in this one?
Again, to try and go against, I have Air Force winning their conference this season, but I'm going to go with Utah State for the upset.
I'm going to go with Air Force. I think, again, they will compete for the Mountain West. They might have even bumped themselves up to the number 2 spot just with how rough Boise State has looked to start the year here. Um, Utah State didn't really impress me against Iowa, and I'm not having huge high expectations for them. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Air Force to open up their conference season with a win. Last thing we're going to look at is our top 5 draft. We're going to go over uh, college football stadiums, the stadiums that we think are must see, before you die, whatever, however you want to phrase it. But these are the top fives that you need to go see before you leave this world. um, Slade, I'll let you go
You got
first.
it first. You go first. You go first.
Okay. Um, I'm going to put this at number 1 just because I've been here. And I think it's an amazing stadium, and not just because of who plays there, but its capacity as well, its location, the surroundings to it. Number 1, I'm going to go with Notre Dame.
Well, I did not see that one being your first one. Uh, for my number one, I'm going to go with Beaver Stadium
I was gonna say if you pick anything other than that, I'm gonna be concerned.
with in parentheses the whiteout.
Yeah,
I think that of any of the games you can go to there, that's definitely the one that everyone would need to go to.
yeah. My number 2, I'm gonna stay in the Big Ten. I'm gonna go with the Big House, the largest college football stadium. Not
Mhm.
sorry, the largest stadium in the world, I do believe. Um, I would love to go see a game there. So I'm going to put Michigan at number 3
I'm going with Enter Sandman. The
or number 2.
environment.
Sorry.
Sorry. I'm going Enter Sandman for my number two. I thought that this was going to be your number one, to be honest. And uh, I think that it's just crazy that the stadium hasn't crumbled to pieces yet with them doing that on on a routine basis.
I, so I've been to Lane Stadium. I went to a night
Mm-hmm.
game there. It was definitely on my list. It was going to be my number 3 pick. A lot of people have talked about, like, you can feel the building shaking, the stadium shaking, and I thought I had been in environments like that when that first little chord hits for Enter Sandman and everybody starts jumping. I vividly remember, like, feeling everything just start shaking, and I was like, "Oh shit! Like, this is how I die. Like, I'm gonna die." Enter Sandman's blaring, and people are just jumping all around me. But that was absolutely by far and away one of the coolest experiences of my life. We're trying to go there in October. I'm excited for you guys to see it and experience. It's gonna be an afternoon game, but I still think it's gonna be wild.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm excited for that. Number 3, I'm gonna go with Texas. Um, I think just the fan base that's there alone would make that game incredible to watch. And the size of it as well, I think boost it. So I'm gonna go with Texas at number 3.
Number three, uh, I'm gonna go with USC in the Rose Bowl state. I think that
That's UCLA.
oh sorry UCLA, my bad, UCLA in the Rose Bowl. I just think it's really cool that I mean, a lot of the teams will never get to play at that stadium, and they get it as their home stadium. I mean, they're unable to fill even a quarter of it, but it's a really cool monumental stadium for me.
Yeah, I got 2, and I can't decide which one I want to put at number 4. All right, number 4, I'm gonna put Ohio State. Um, so I've been here. I haven't been to a game, but I've been to the stadium. I got to walk around it and see it. the The architecture on the outside is amazing, and I love it. I would love to go see a game inside of it, but I think that the historical significance behind it as well, it adds a lot to it. So I'm going to put Ohio Stadium at number 4.
I'm gonna go with the Swamp in Florida at my number 4. I think that obviously right now, maybe not the best time, but I think that it would have been crazy to go to a game there when Tebow and, and the Pouncey brothers and these guys are playing there and just kind of running college football at the time.
Yeah, that was another one. I got 3 here for number 5. Well, 2 for number 5.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think even with Florida not being as good, I still think the Swamp would be a fun place to go to a game. I mean, Florida fans seem to pack that thing out no matter what. They just leave early when their teams get blown out. Um, Number 5, I'm going to put Nebraska. I mean, again, Nebraska fans, uh, their sellout streak is a little. I would put an asterisk next to it, especially what happened last year. One of the boosters or whatever bought all the tickets for the rest of the season
Mm-hmm.
and then just resold them, so that way they could say, "Hey, we sold all of our tickets." Regardless, Nebraska fans are a different breed. I should know. Um, I'm excited to get out there for a game soon, and so I'm going to put Nebraska at number 5.
My last one, I don't think it's hard to miss this one, but I think going and watching Alabama at home, uh, Bryant Denny Stadium is must see football, especially if it's a 7 p.m. game. I just think it's hard to not want to go to that stadium, especially because you know you're going to see some electric football.
Yeah. The other one I was debating on putting in here was LSU, but I feel like there's a difference between LSU day games and night games. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying, it's a huge difference, but everybody talks about, "Oh, you need to go to a night game at LSU." Whereas, I feel like a lot of these other stadiums is you need to go see the stadium. So yeah, that would be the other my honorable mention, I guess.
I like it. I like it.
So that'll do it for this week's episode. We thank you guys, as always, so much for checking us out. Don't forget to join us for Out of the Tunnel on Saturday morning. We'll get you ready for week 3, go over some headlines. Like we said, 14 games, our cash out picks. Uh, Slay's going to tell you what to not bet on. And then we'll give you upset alerts, all that fun stuff as well. So we hope to see you guys there. Thank you as always, and we will see you in the next video.